Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to Jacket Jockeys with Justin.
And me, Jen. Putting the J for Jen in Jacket Jockeys.
All right.
You
So
may not know this, but Justin starts with a G.
Gustin, please.
Well, I pronounce it Justin.
You can pronounce it however you want. I would
Okay,
prefer
yeah,
to be
well,
referred to as Gustin from
well,
now
from now
on.
on,
Thank you.
Gustin, not Guston.
Justin.
We're off to
Um,
a great start in terms of sticking to the topic.
this is season 2, episode 7 of Showtime's Emmy-winning prestigious drama mystery horror series Yellowjackets, entitled Burial.
And I think this episode may be in line for an EGOT.
Actually, you're right. It's strangely eligible.
Strangely eligible.
I do believe this is the first proper musical sequence that we've had in the episode or in the show. Like they have, they've done like singing to a song, like a
Uh-huh.
known
Yeah.
song,
Mhm.
but this is actually an original song that is performed within the show. So I think,
Yeah, that makes me want to go. It makes me want to see the musical theater treatment of the season one amazing scene where they all dance to Montel Jordan's classic.
yeah,
This is how we do
this is
it.
how we do it.
This is how we do it. But a musical theater
Right.
treatment.
Yeah. They could totally do that. That'd
Yeah,
probably be a different show,
that
but
would be definitely.
um,
Is that Glee?
it sounds
Glee,
like
but
kind of
cannibalism.
sounds like Glee with cannibalism.
Glee in a cabin, and they
Yeah,
eat each
Glee in a
other.
cabin and they eat each other. That was the pitch, and they were
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, okay, but let's just do like one song
Maybe
per
we'll work
season."
up to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Let's
We
start
need
with
to
something that's a little bit more lost with teenage girls
tell
meets alive. That's what studio execs sound like for those of you who are not in the biz.
yeah, maybe you've never been in like a meeting with a studio before. That's
Hmm.
what they sound like.
Yeah, we're actually in the process of optioning this podcast, and so that's how we know.
Optioning, optioning for what?
I
What are
don't
they
know.
gonna do with
Any
this?
option.
Turn it into a
Well,
movie?
I was
Like
thinking
what?
it would make a good soap opera.
A soap opera? Okay,
Yeah,
a t
but like a YouTube soap opera.
a YouTube soap opera.
Yes. Why you seem surprised?
Okay,
What did
okay.
you think we were optioning for?
I that was my question, and I
Uh-huh.
guess I got an answer,
Yeah.
so I can't complain. All right. Well,
Time for a check-in?
you ready to, yeah, obligatory check-in. Still no mention of the postcards. And they're all together. I'm losing hope that they will ever bring up the postcards at this point because it just seems like they all got together in this episode. They were reminiscing, and I mean sort of. They were also dodging reminiscing, but nonetheless,
They were reminiscing songs
yeah,
from
you
the
would think
90s.
that because they sit and talk about themselves in a circle, and you just would think that if it was ever going to come up, this would be a time.
Speaking of that scene, very Lindelof moment of conveniently dropping that they have memory loss.
Yeah,
So that's a
totally.
great excuse for them
Totally.
not to talk about certain
Yeah,
things.
yeah. As soon as they said that, I was like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this is your failsafe for like whatever,
Hmm.
whatever thing you're gonna reveal later that it's like, why weren't they talking about X, Y, or Z, back in blah 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 season?" And it's gonna be like, wow, their memories are very
Oh,
hazy.
hazy, so
No one
hazy.
remembers well in an ecstatic state.
Ecstatic
So it's like
states.
ecstatic, yikes.
I don't think I've
Anyway,
ever heard that.
I haven't either. I kind of think maybe she just made that up, but we'll see. Um, also, no Jessica Roberts, of course. That is also a thing that could have come up since there's some discussion of Adam in this episode among them, what happened with him, and Misty knows that she was sent by Ty and she's there, and it just seems, I don't know, it just seems weird, like that it doesn't come up.
Yeah, so no postcards, no mention of Jessica Roberts, but we did get two things that we have been waiting for. Uh, where's that goat come from? The goat in the
Where's that
credits.
goat come from?
Where's that goat? That's some excellent English.
Where is that
And
goat
where did
come
that goat come
from?
from? And what about the red curtain shot, also in the credits?
Oh yeah.
And we got the answer to a question we didn't know we needed the answer to, which was who would play Caligula in a Broadway musical.
Right, indeed. And yeah, we got our answer for that. I won't spoil it for you who
Hmm.
haven't seen the episode
Yeah.
yet and who are just gonna listen along as
We'll
we
talk
narrate
about
it.
everything else, but not that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very verboten. It's like
It's
the
very
the
verboten.
one line we won't cross.
Verboten.
Verboten. All right, so shall we just dive on in, or do you want to say anything in general?
I guess let's just take the plunge.
Take the plunge. Okay. So we start off at the cabin. This is, you could actually call this episode a tale of two cabins if you wanted,
I
because
will.
we're kind of going
Let's.
back and forth
Mhm.
between present day cabins
Yeah.
and past
I'm a little
cabins.
surprised they didn't do that.
Me too. So anyway, we're at the cabin. This means the old cabin. I refer to the present day as Lottie's camp, just for clarity.
Yeah.
I was calling it Lottie's cabin for a while. I'm like, this is just
That's a
confusing.
problem. Yeah.
So, because she's there also in the past. Anyway, not that it was her cabin, but
It was the Woods cabin.
so we start off with a slow montage over "Something in the Way" by '90s favorite Nirvana,
Who's
and
that?
we few have heard of them. They're very obscure. I actually did want to say, I know like sometimes they definitely go with the more obvious thing. Certainly that's true later in the episode. But sometimes they go with a deep cut,
Yeah.
they could have played other more obvious Nirvana songs than this.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is not one that many people know, I
It was
think.
a great tone for
Um,
this for the scene.
yeah.
A dreary
Very dreary,
scene
very dreary and slow, and
following up on the, sort of miserable ending of
yeah.
the pregnancy.
Yeah, and they're all just kind of like sitting in silence, staring. So we learned,
Apparently snowed in.
yeah, that's the thing we learned after this that wasn't clear to me at all because, and honestly, like the way they play this, well, whatever. I'll talk about that after I finish the scene. So, we see various characters staring. Ty tries to get Shauna to drink water. She refuses. She's still holding the baby at this point. Lottie notices that the snow stopped. And so they pull the door open, and we see there's like a pile of snow. It was like 4 or 5 feet high at the door. Um, but somehow they unblock the door. They don't actually clarify. Like they got the door open, but it's like, wait, how are you just walk? They then for the rest of the episode, they just casually walk outside.
Yeah.
So anyway, I
Yeah.
just feel like this is. It's like they want both for them to be like completely blocked, but also to be able to go outside.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you can't have both. Anyway,
Their backs are killing them now.
yeah, like they
All that
shovel stuff
shoveling.
outside with like tiny little bowls and stuff, and it's just like, how the fuck?
Yeah, it's a week later that they're walking out of
Yeah,
that.
and yet, I mean, the
Mhm.
scene plays continuously. They actually
Yeah.
go out right here.
Maybe they have a gas powered snow blower, like one of those that they use for parking lots.
Oh
Why don't they
boy,
use that to drive out of the wilderness and
that's,
find
you
food?
think they could do that? They still be there.
Oh boy.
Sorry,
Oh boy.
had to.
Yeah.
Little LLD for all of you. LLD people. Last lowdown. If any of you are like Jackets only listeners, welcome.
Jacket.
If you're just into the jackets, let me tell you, there's a series from the earlier 2000s entitled Lost that I think you might enjoy because it has some similar themes and situations,
It's
and
funny to imagine people going the other way with it.
there must be such people.
For sure, in like 10 years, the youngsters, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, oh my god, this is so much like
Yeah, it's
Yellowjackets.
gonna be like when we see those lists that are like, if you like Lost, check out The Prisoner.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
like, wow, this is what the 70s were like.
yeah. That is what the 70s were like. Okay, so anyway, right, so the door's not blocked anymore. Ty suggests Shauna take a walk and get some fresh air. Shauna says nothing. Most of them go outside and start shoveling snow. Shauna does take her baby outside to a tree and pile some rocks on it and says, "It's you and me against the world." I don't know what that means. But she does say that. I mean, she said
Yeah, you
that in the
pointed
dream.
right, right. You pointed that out because I was like, what the fuck does that mean? But yeah, I guess it's just a callback to the dream.
Yeah, it's callback to the dream, which she does reference later in the episode. So part of me
Yeah, so
feels
is it
like,
like a way of telling the viewer that she still hasn't let go of her suspicion that they ate the baby?
yes, I
But
think,
then what is she holding?
yeah,
They're not going to show the viewer this, but just look and see if it has like chew marks on
there's a lot of mysterious delusion going on in this episode.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely an example. And I want to get more into that later because I think that little thread is it's actually the dramatic climax of the episode. And I don't understand it. So we'll have to talk about it. But yeah, for now, I think there's a lot of things in this episode I realized when I watched it the second time that I think are largely there just to remind us of certain things because they'll become relevant. And I
Yeah.
kind of feel that way about this.
Yeah, probably
Because
so.
they played the line in the previously on as well.
Yeah.
So it's like she said this in the dream. Now she's saying it here. Like she still hasn't let go of the dream. I think that's the main point, but we'll see. Okay. So we get another alternate version of the theme by Alanis Morissette. I don't know why, but they did this. Just noting
Yeah,
it.
I want the Liz Fair version next. There's so many great female vocalists with these haunting style. Liz Fair's style is maybe not haunting, but I want to hear them like next season. I want every week a new female vocalist covering this.
They really could have done that. But yeah, it seems like I don't know. Well, I don't know what happened, but will there be more covers in the future? I wouldn't rule it out. But I kind of feel like as late as we are in the season, it might be next season before we get that kind of thing. We'll see. Maybe they have one for each season. I don't know. Okay. So we go back to Lottie's camp, present day. Vantai and Shauna turn in their stuff to Misty. She's basically holding the bowl now. She's been there. It's literally stated that she's been there 24 hours.
I saw that bowl, and for one split second, I was like, "Oh my god, it's the Holy Grail!"
Oh
Speaking
no.
of Lindelof.
Oh no.
Anyway, if you don't
Um
know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it.
yeah, or if you do know what we're talking about,
Do
then
worry about it.
worry about it a lot. Um
Crossover.
Crossover time. Yeah, that would be so weird. If
That would
like
be
Betty
so
Gilpin
weird.
shows up.
But I keep making these comments of like, oh, that's such a Lindelof moment, meaning that sort of like, is it or isn't it? I don't know. I'm leaving the door open. But this episode was also Lindelof in this other category of Lindelof writing of like zany,
Yes.
and you're not sure why you're watching it. But not this scene. So I guess I should wait until.
I think actually I think the point is clear.
No, I do. I think the point is clear, but I don't think it's clear why you would choose such a stylistically random way of.
You know what? I just had a thought.
Oh, let's
I
hear.
just had a thought, where it actually just clicked in my head that it makes sense.
Okay.
So they established in the car drive up there that the car drive. They were in the car
The car
drive.
drive.
Sorry. I'm speaking really well also today. Anyway, that Misty and Walter
They were
are fans of
listening to. Yeah.
musicals. So actually, I feel like in that, and like
Yeah.
Kaliko's a
So it
big
was
deal.
Kristen.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. She died with a song in her heart or
Oh.
something.
That's how you know that. Okay. Well. Anyway.
Anyway, yeah, yeah. So I actually feel like I didn't really put it together, but actually, like that makes sense. Then, if Misty's gonna have a
Yeah,
vision, it would
what
take the
sort of
form of a musical.
subconscious soup would you come up with?
Yeah,
And like Caligula should be on her
yeah,
mind in the background, musicals on her mind.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I
It's
think
just
it
it's
fits.
so the look of it is so different from anything they've done in the
It's a big
show.
departure for the show. Definitely, it
Yeah.
was very zany, and I don't know. Misty is like verging on parody at times,
Yeah.
so it's like if you're gonna do it with any character in the show, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, she's the one going on.
So yeah, I feel like it works, but it was definitely a notable departure for the
Yeah,
show.
it was like a Black Lodge, Big
Yeah,
Lebowski,
yeah, yeah, very much like that. Yeah.
uh a star is not a star is born. There's some that like that shot of sitting in front of a dressing room mirror makes me think of something I'm not placing it. But anyway, sorry, that's not the scene we're talking
It is
about.
not. We will get to that. Okay. So they're turning in their stuff to Misty. Ty asks if they joined a cult. She means
It's an
Misty.
intentional
She means
community.
Misty and Nat, just for the record, because they were already there. Lottie says it's an intentional community. Thanks for spoiling it. And Nat explains what happened to her, the whole context, and that the place helped and could help them as well.
And I believe she's sincere. Do you believe she's sincere when she says this?
Yeah, uh I think I buy it, but I was listening to a podcast about this. I'm sorry, I'm really bad. All the
I don't
podcasts have like vaguely similar names, and it's hard for me to keep them straight. So
sidebar, I just don't understand how you have time to listen to podcasts about the show between the time when we watch the show and we record this podcast. Anyway, I'm just that's
they come out fast. They
I
come out
guess
fast. Some
so.
podcasts, well, the episode is like technically available. Like if you're on the West Coast, you can watch it on Thursday. So like if you
Well,
watch
we
it.
are on the East Coast, which is not the best coast, but the Beast
Yeah,
Coast.
yeah, yeah. But my
So
point is that like if you watch it or you can get a podcast out like pretty early. And
yes.
as you will know if you're listening to this podcast was recorded on Sunday or later, right? It's necessarily the case.
Yeah, we should you know what we should do is we should take a boat, a houseboat, and move as far west as we can so that we can get the episode as early as possible relative to our own time.
I like to just hear what people say because it helps like collect my own thoughts about it. I used to do a Lost Lowdown too. I would
Yeah.
listen to other stuff. There would be like initial reactions that would come out,
Well, your
you know.
listeners know that I don't bother to collect
Um,
my thoughts before we start
Yeah,
recording.
yeah,
So,
yeah. No, it's good. Claude didn't either, so it's totally
who's
it's
Claude?
it's on brand. I don't know. I don't know why I said that. Um uh I was just gonna say one of the hosts like pointed out that like it is a little jarring how far Natalie has come in this episode. Like
Yeah.
it feels like in the last episode she was like outside shooting, and she was like, I killed my best friend, and she almost kills the goldfish, and it's like, it just feels like, I can imagine an arc from there to this, but it just feels like cutting straight to this from that is like, and it really has only been like a few hours. Like this is absolutely the same next day as that. So
Yeah, so I think in both the past and the present, they've got this problem with the timing and how long they want it to have been. And the snow and the sense of dread in the opening scene in the wilderness. I think they want you to think that a a significant amount of time has passed. I don't know how long that is, um but they're kind of painted into a corner in the present. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, well, when she first started, when Nat first started talking, I thought she's just saying this. She's working some agenda, but then there was nothing else in the scene that made me think that that was true. She just came across as sincere, and I feel like Nat is not a character that they write to like trick us about her intentions.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. She's pretty straightforward and blunt about what she thinks about things. And the later scene where they're like gathered together makes it clear that she's sincere, I think. Because they're like all fucking around and she's like, no, serious, this we should be serious about this. This is like a big, we need to like help ourselves and that's what we're here to do. And so it just like and like I said, I buy it in general. It just feels like too big of a leap from the previous episode that was literally the day before,
Yeah,
It's
I
just like,
agree. And we have that frame of reference from the first season where she's in treatment yet again and
yeah,
she's like, "No, I'm great. I'm ready to go because I have my purpose
yeah,
to go kill Misty."
yeah.
Like it's
Because
she's
of the
not easily
postcard.
mm,
Because of the
sh-
postcard. Yes, I shan't forget, even if they want me to. No, I won't rule out that they throw in some weird retcon. Like you said, your theory, like Walter sent the postcards, which I feel like is like valid. And if they are going to reveal something about the postcards this season, I feel like the most likely answer is that Walter sent the
But
postcards.
I have a new theory about Walter.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I think
Do you want
Walt
to? Oh, go.
No, should I wait?
I was gonna ask, but go if you
I
want to
think
go.
I think Walter is a law enforcement.
A lar?
A lawyer. He's a lawyer. No, I think he yeah, I think he might be a narc.
So he was posing as an FBI agent, but he
Yeah,
is actually
an FBI
an
agent.
FBI
Yeah.
agent.
It kind of sucks and I kind of don't believe it because like I think I do believe it because of that, because I think TV writers would love to do a thing like that. But I kind of don't believe it because it's a little too close to Callie uh
Mm,
starting this relationship with an
mhm.
undercover cop.
Yep.
Um
Yeah.
but
True.
it's just I think the
But it could be a
timing
thematic resonance.
I think the timing um uh of Misty leaving that voicemail for him
Yeah.
and the revelation that they've discovered the remains
Hmm.
of Adam, the remains Adam's remains
Yep.
is a better way maybe to say that. Um is I don't know that we'll see. We'll see.
We will see. We will see. No, I mean, I think it's a valid theory. I kind of agree that, yeah, so if he's an FBI agent, then I don't think he sent the postcards.
Correct. I think, I'm going to go with one or the other or a third option, which is neither.
Yeah, the third option is like they just want us to forget about the postcards because like they serve their purpose and they just sort of move on, or like we're supposed to think Jeff sent them,
But
and
he's going to come back. We're going to learn more about him. And
yeah,
I
he's
just think
definitely gonna come back.
I don't know, he's fishy to me.
Yeah. Something's coming. It's just not necessarily gonna help with the
Yeah.
postcards.
Well, yes. Prepare
It's
yourself
just
for
I'm throwing
disappointment.
that out there because I think that's like if they're gonna do something, that seems like the most likely thing at this point.
Yeah. I just think we should all prepare ourselves for disappointment.
I agree. For the record, I'm like totally losing hope at this point.
I know.
Okay. It's like, well, anyway, you
I
all
know.
know.
I
So
was the one holding on to hope. I won't. Yeah,
yeah, I just feel like we've come too far
we've come too
at this
far
point,
not to get an answer about the postcards, but we've come too far to get an answer about the
pretty
postcards.
much.
Maybe
Pretty
season
much.
4.
Okay. So are you ready to
Yeah, let's
continue
do
here?
it.
Um, so where do we go? Okay, right. Yeah, back at the cabin, Van consoles Ty about the baby not making it, but points out they're starving and it's time they woke up.
Right,
Uh,
basically implying that even if the baby had made it through birth, how long could the baby have really lived?
yes. Van thought it meant something that she survived, that she had some kind of purpose, but now she doesn't believe it. Ty points out that doing the stuff with her in the circle has helped her, and that was because of Van. But Van still wants to know why she's there. Okay, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
So this is the scene where it finally started to connect the dots for me between adult Van's attitude about Lottie, which I do feel like wasn't sufficiently followed up on in this episode, but because like she's her stuff is all about Ty in this episode. She doesn't really get to interact with Lottie directly in that very much. So uh yeah, it doesn't really sort of like put a fine point on how she feels about Lottie right now, because she's dealing with other stuff, and I don't think that's really a priority for her. But because they had that long shot at the end of the previous episode where she sees Lottie and she slowly walks towards the camera, and like that was kind of the end, at least of the present day stuff. um it just kind of feels like there's, I don't know, there's a missing piece there. But nonetheless, because Van was so committed to Lottie and her business in the past, it just felt like, okay, there's at some point there's a shift, and this is the episode where they decided to kind of signal like where that shift came from. This idea of like eventually sort of losing the belief, losing her faith, if you will, that that it really means something, that there's actually anything important going on, and it isn't just a bunch of coincidences and luck slash misery going on,
Yeah.
and so anyway, I think this scene kind of helped, because this, that feels like a very reasonable Van-esque reaction, I was surprised she was buying into it to begin with, so it's like if she is going to buy into it, then it makes sense to me that she's maybe one of the first ones besides Lottie herself to get like disillusioned, and to you know see seemingly like the baby situation like triggers this, like seeing how that turned out. Lottie makes this blanket, they do these sacrifices, and the baby just dies. Like there's no or had already died, so there, like, it doesn't do shit. So I like it, that's how it comes across to me. I mean, she doesn't say that directly, but
Yeah, there's a fair amount of disillusionment emerging right now, and there's a lot more roller coaster to go on. So
oh,
I
definitely.
so yeah, it's definitely a theme, oh well, what and it comes up in some later scenes, like, well, maybe this idea that, well, the wilderness isn't transactional one to one. It's not like I did this for you, now you give me this thing, but it's like, well, it made the snow stop, like reaching for meaning. uh it, it's really interesting, and this scene is in dialogue not only with that scene later with Gin and Danielle. What is this other girl's name?
Melissa,
Melissa.
the backwards hat one.
Backwards hat one.
She
Yeah.
never takes off that backwards hat.
Yeah. It holds the wig on. Um, there's that scene, but then this is also in interesting dialogue with the later scene where um Ty and Lottie are talking about, they're out, I guess, looking for Crystal.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
and
yeah.
and it's like, well, the bad one is the one who knew things. I don't know those things. I and there's this idea in this scene that, well, Van's purpose was to help Thaisa, or at least Ty's like, well, but you helped me in a way that I couldn't have been helped otherwise. And then there's this suggestion later on in the scene with Lottie of like, well, maybe that's not really helping us.
Yeah,
What we need is actually to get the bad one back,
yeah,
because the bad one is the one who can help us.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And in terms of this, like, where are we going? How do we get further toward that, episode of the pilot opening scene? um
right.
lots of questions remain,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
this is a long winter.
It is. It is.
I guess it needs to be.
It's, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, there is a question of like how much shit is gonna happen this winter versus the next one. Because they're gonna have to go through two
Yeah,
because
and
of the
what is going to
timeline.
happen in the summer anyway?
There's a real slow play here. It's I mean, they've stated they have a 5-year plan, so I think it makes sense that they don't rush through the flashback too much.
Yeah,
It's like they did a 2-month jump, but then it was like slow down from there. Like it's only been, I think, like a few days since the beginning of the season.
but these questions
Right?
of,
They ate Jackie like a week ago, maybe.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, these questions of faith and the power and acts of devotion and sacrifice, and what do you get from that? I don't know, it's a little bit, I don't know, Jobian or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like how far will their faith last?
Yeah. And
Anyway,
yeah, we don't really know the answer, at least for all of them,
right?
because it's clear from adult Lottie that even she, is not so sure what she thinks about that stuff that
Hmm.
happened in the past.
Right.
She's like clearly at least conflicted. It's like if Lottie's conflicted about it, then like I can't
Yeah.
imagine, they all are to some extent.
Yeah.
Um, some of them like more obviously than others,
Yeah.
but okay. So all right, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So then we go back to Lottie's camp. The Yellow Jackets, or I'm just gonna call them the Yellow Jackets because they're all there now. Or invite, Misty, is she a Yellow Jacket? Let's just say yes. They're invited to choose from a menu. There's four of them, and the menu has four treatments. And for whatever reason, they each have to choose one, and they can't both choose the same thing. And they don't say this, but this is how it turns out for no apparent reason. And this just bugged me when I watched it again.
Oh boy. It's yeah. It's
Like,
almost
why
it's
couldn't
almost
they,
like they wrote it this way.
why couldn't they all choose the same one?
There's
Or
only one baby goat. There's only one float pod.
sensory deprivation tank?
And there's only one woods to forage in.
Yeah, okay. All right, fair. And only one cabin to paint with a makeup brush.
There's only one makeup brush.
Only one makeup brush. That's it. Anyway, so the four treatments are self-care, guidance, forage, and renewal. Van says it's not for me. Natalie tries to encourage her. Lottie mentions at this point that Switzerland, the institution in Switzerland, was over a decade ago. So
Yeah.
this is a little reveal.
Jessica Roberts is not very good at her job. Oh no, Jessica Roberts did find this place. Why did everybody
Jessica
think?
Roberts did find this place.
Yes,
You're right.
but why did everybody else think that she was still in Switzerland? They just stopped following her.
Yeah.
She goes by her real name. I know I've harped on this before.
Yeah. It's strange. It's very strange. It's yeah,
Did they just assume that she'd never be released?
yeah, it kind of seems that way. But based on the thing that happens later in this episode with the therapy, it really makes me wonder what happened at the institution, 10 years ago. Like, what was the path of her getting out of there and going here and having delusional therapy, seemingly? Anyway, I just feel like this episode raised a lot of questions about Lottie's story in between
Yeah.
the institution and
Yeah,
the
maybe we'll get
camp.
more of that in some future seasons.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a big gap there, because they could have told us like, she just got out like a couple of years ago or something.
But I think it's also good that they tell us a long time ago, because to build a successful intentional community is going to take some time.
Yeah, definitely.
Most intentional communities fail in the first 6 months. It's really hard to get loans
Oh
for
boy,
them.
oh boy, little business advice
Yeah.
with Gen.
With Gen. Business
Um,
advice with Gen.
Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of just a side note here. It doesn't really matter in the scene, but I just thought it was worth noting because it's like a concrete revelation about this time period that's still like pretty mysterious. Okay. So as Van is leaving, Ty says she'll take renewal, which was clearly a bad choice. No offense.
Yeah, it's the renewal of the cabin.
She got like the crappiest one, I think. Although
This feels prettier with eyeshadow.
we never learn what forage is because Van just like bullshits her way through it.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah. Anyway, we learned what
And it's like nobody gives a shit that Van is just not doing her task. They're
yeah.
gonna like track you down unless
Yeah, they're a lot more well, they kind of let like Ty doesn't do very much. We learn what she's supposed to do, but she does like a tiny square and like is like fuck this and hangs out with Van for the rest of the episode. So, yeah, I mean, they both kind of fuck off, but like Misty and Shada are more like pushed into like doing their thing.
Yeah.
So it's a bit asymmetric. Anyway, Shauna takes self-care. Misty says, I'll take forage when Van is prompted. So Van just says she'll take forage. I didn't really understand this. Like, why does that
I
override?
love that. It's so petty.
Yeah, it's really strange. This leaves Misty with guidance because they all have to have one only. I don't know. Anyway, why can't they both have forage? Um, so then Lottie tells them to text the landline number and give up their phones because that's what they have to do here. I guess like they should have put their phones in the bowl, but whatever. Um, it's let's just let's just not worry about that. Okay. Ready to okay. So then we just continue from there. Shauna's led into a barn by an acolyte. I didn't bother to look up the name.
Goat acolyte.
Goat acolyte who hands her a baby goat. Shauna is supposed to take care of the goat. Shauna thinks she's going to have to kill the goat and tries to refuse. But the alternative is mucking out the barn. So she takes the goat, and the goat's name is Bruce.
I don't know how anyone could even briefly refuse to take a baby goat.
I agree. I agree. But Shauna's, going through some stuff and it's strangely aligned with the flashback. It's almost like they're watching the
How?
show and they know what point the flashback is.
Um,
Cause it's like earlier season Shauna, like, I don't know if she'd react like this, but this season Shauna reacts like this as though anyway. Yeah.
yeah.
That I feel like
Yeah,
that's
for
the
some reason.
reason.
Well, there's that, and the thing that they talk about later with Callie.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Because the thing with Callie, they in this episode is explicitly tied in with the thing that happened with the baby in
Yeah,
the cabin. So
yeah.
I think that's all. And the goat is referred to as a kid later. And so anyway, like all of that
Kid is the
is
word for a baby goat.
I know, but it clearly is triggering this thing.
Yeah.
Like, and that is part of making that explicit.
Yes. Yes.
So
It's not subtle.
it's definitely not subtle. And I just thought like this whole thing, like, well, uh if you don't do this, you gotta muck out the barn. It's like, couldn't she just be like Ty and be like, fuck this, I'm gonna go drink with Van and Ty? Like, what are you gonna do? You gonna force me to do it? I don't have to do this. Like, it's just weird that she's like, okay. I don't know.
I don't know that you would really work out at an intentional community.
No, I'm not saying
You, Van, and Thaisa are gonna flunk out of intentional community.
I'm not saying this is what I would do. I'm just saying like she's like, I don't want to do this. And then it's like, well, if you don't do this, you have to and it's like, well, I don't want to do that either. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Like
Option three, I walk away.
it's just strange that like that is convincing to her. Like, oh, okay, you know, like
Yeah.
there's this thing on Lost in the Dharma times, spoiler alert, where it's like I forget who it was. I think it was maybe um I think it was maybe Hurley or something, like does something uh and then Pierre Chang threatens him like, if you step out of line again, you'll have to go clean up the polar bear cages. But
But this
like
is how social pressure works, right? Like most of the stuff that we do in societies, it's like, well, what are you going to do if I don't do it? Like you do it because people are going to look at you away if you don't do it, or they're going to guilt you if you don't do it, or, like most of the stuff we do, we don't do it under threat of formal legal punishment.
Well, yeah, but the point I was trying to make is in that context, they are infiltrating Dharma. They need to remain in good standing. Also, they don't have anywhere else to go. Like, if they get kicked out of Dharma, like, what are they going to do? Either go back to the real world in the 70s or go live with the others? Like, there's really whereas here, they all brought their cars there. They can just drive out and leave
Well,
anytime they
they
want.
don't have their keys or their shit.
Well, okay. I
So,
mean,
but, I mean, what I'm saying is that we are social beings, and we have by adulthood, we've internalized all these things. Like I have to do this because. I
sure.
mean, and that I argue is a really psychologically compelling, and it's like we're evolved to be hardwired to to do the thing that is going to make our interactions with other people in our society smooth because of this like lizard brain fear of rejection or conflict.
Sure.
That,
Sure.
you know.
I mean, I'll buy it, and also like they don't want to be too repetitive and have Shauna do the exact same thing that Ty and Van do.
Right.
So it's all fine. I'm not. It just struck me as a bit of an odd threat in the scene, so I just wanted to point it out. Okay. So then we go back to the cabin. Ben looks out of the window and has a VHS. I'm gonna call it a vision now because this episode kind of changes the nature of these for me. I do feel that I do feel that the earlier, well, okay, let me just describe it and then I'll talk about it. So Paul's on the phone and says he isn't ready, and Ben questions Paul about what's going on, and he says he has to go. This was never meant to be his hiding place, and now he isn't welcome here, and it's time. He walks out the door saying, I love you. We all love you, Ben. Ben follows and walks outside, back in the real world where Van and Ty are, and he yells for Paul, and he says, they're like, are you okay? And he says, I'm gonna be just fine. He's clearly made the decision to kill himself, as we find out later. That's kind of a spoiler, but you've seen the episode, right?
I have.
Okay, yeah. So this really changed the game for me. And I actually put this together with the therapy scenes where it was kind of a game-changing episode for how I viewed them. I do believe that at least those early ones before they left for the flight and stuff, I think those are more like closer to like genuine memories. But as time has gone on, I've realized that they've started like morphing. And so like in the previous episode, people pointed this out and I didn't really believe them, but in this episode I was like, oh, they were right. That in the previous episode when he has one of these and they're doing the charades, it's in a cabin, and it's actually just an altered version of the cabin that they're in the
Oh.
wilderness. Like he's actually transitioned from visualizing being back in the real world to actually transporting the characters into his current setting, redecorated and
Ooh,
stuff.
okay.
But it's actually the same cabin.
Wow. I feel a little disappointed in myself that I didn't notice that. That seems like the kind of thing that I would notice.
Yeah. So this in this episode, it became very clear that it
Yeah.
was the same cabin because Paul walks out, he follows, and it's like, oh shit, he's outside the cabin.
Right.
And and I noticed the decorations too. That like it's the same fixtures, but there's a phone installed.
Yeah.
There's curtains. It's different, but he's actually he's
It's like sleight of hand or something. There's so much to pay attention to in those scenes that you miss this other thing.
yeah. So I feel like it's kind of a visual version of how he's like succeeding less and less at dissociating from reality.
Ah, yeah.
That's how it feels to me. Like the his present situation is intruding more and more on his attempts to mentally escape, and this all makes that clear.
Yeah.
The way this scene plays out, and like I feel like it's his sort of subconscious like saying like you need to stop running away from your problems, you need to face them. And this whole like we love you, this really reminds me of that vision that Jackie has when she's about to die, and she sees,
Yeah.
all of them, and we're waiting for you. And, it's like this weird, and we see the cabin guy. So it almost comes across like, like Paul is a representative of the woods or the cabin guy or all of the, or some kind of weird representation of that. Because it's weird that he uses that phrase, we, like, it's like, what, who does Ben think that means? Because this is in his mind, right? Like, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting to portray it that way, specifically. And I do think this is pretty definitive. I mean, if this isn't the end of these VHS scenes, I don't know what is. It seems pretty clear that he's turned a corner. He shaves the beard. There's a big scene. His story's going to continue, but I feel like we've actually hit the end of the VHS stuff, and I kind of understand why they did it. I think in retrospect, my gripe is just that he was just way too out of it in that first episode because he's been so much more with it since then. I think it would have been better if they didn't show him just like catatonic in a bed for an entire episode episode number 3 or whatever that was. Like it was just too early for him to be that far gone. It would have made more sense for him to be like that in this episode, and then he gets up. Like but whatever. I know they got to juggle the time with the characters, and Ben is like a B level character at best. So
Yeah, but if it's like the memory of the horror of watching them eat a person, it has faded somewhat, and he's sort of,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, this question of what the we signifies, because I guess I thought of it as, your subconscious telling, and with Jackie and with Ben, telling yourself the thing that you need to hear in order to do to pass on
yeah,
it to death.
yeah,
um Interesting. Well, I have a big question mark about, well, I mean, obviously we've got another scene with Ben, but like,
yeah.
what now?
That
but
is a good
but I
question.
did think it was effective. The scene was effective.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It actually worked. That's why I was saying like it brought home to me like how this is working, and I was like, okay, I can live with this now. Like I get what you were building up, and the transition in the previous episode from the earlier stuff that was more flashbacky to this that's like more clearly just a complete hallucination.
Hmm.
Like makes it work better. It's just yeah, that's why the only thing I'm sort of not quite on board with is the way he was portrayed in that earlier episode.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was on his last legs. He should have hit his breaking point then, and it's just weird. I don't know. It's weird to
Yeah.
me that he hits it here. I don't know. But whatever. Like I said, on a show like this with so many characters, and especially if you're not in the top tier, it's like they got to get you in where they can, and so I feel like that that's part of why it's just like practical reasons because
Yeah.
other characters need attention in this episode, so
Yeah.
they didn't want to have Ben's breakdown while they were trying to juggle all this other stuff. That's my theory, at least. All right, are you ready to continue? Okay, so in the next scene we have sorry, I lost it. Here it is. Lottie's camp. Lisa takes Misty into a room with a sensory deprivation tank and tells Misty to get in. Misty thinks she's all tuned in, doesn't need it. But Lisa points out she hasn't actually done any therapies yet. Misty asks for the bathroom and then sneaks outside.
Classic.
Also, like, yeah, trying to dodge it. Um, though she does eventually do it. Okay. So then we go back to the cabin. Mari, Gin, and Akila are shoveling and talking about the baby and what happened. Misty listens in from a distance. Akila praises Misty's performance. Gin agrees, but Mari suspects that she killed Crystal and mentions that she poisoned Ben. And why isn't she looking for Crystal? So it's like, you know, it reminds me of I don't really think this, but it reminds me of that thing from Big Lebowski, like, no, Walter, you're not wrong. You're just an asshole.
Exactly.
Like Mari's dead on about everything she's saying here. I mean, she didn't
Yeah.
like literally kill Crystal, but she threatened to, and she definitely like put her
She
in a
caused
position.
Crystal's death.
Yeah, she's definitely culpable for her death. And yeah, like that is why she hasn't thought of looking for her. It's very clear that she takes a cue from this.
Yeah.
And yeah, she did poison Ben, and so anyway, Misty is doing a lot of overhearing in this episode. um so we'll pick up on that a bit later. Misty gathered, oh, by later I mean now. Misty gathers them all in the cabin. Ben is shaving his beard finally. That means he's turning a corner. He's turned over a new leaf, and he's decided to recommit to being part of the group.
Yes, that is what that
At
means.
least that's how I would read it if I hadn't seen the rest of the episode.
Hmm.
Anyway, she says they need to go look for Crystal. Ben agrees and says that Javi survived for months, so maybe she survived out there.
At which point they all turn to Javi and say, "Okay, Javi, I know you don't want to talk about it, but now is the time.
What
It
the
is
fuck happened to you,
really
Javi?
important for you to tell us how you survived, where you went, anything you might have experienced that might help us find Crystal."
I gotta say, like, speaking of like Lost things, like this line gave me Lost vibes because it did this thing that Lost is sometimes that always drove me crazy, which was like a character brings up an interesting mystery, but it's actually just a deflection. It's because of their own personal bullshit. They don't
Right.
actually care. He doesn't give a shit.
No.
He's just saying, yeah, let's all go outside so I can
So
like
I can go
sneak
kill
away and kill
myself.
myself.
Yeah.
That's all he cares about. He's
Yeah.
not worried about like what really happened to Javi out there. That is
Yeah.
not his priority at all. And so it's just like it's annoying that he's the only one to voice the thing or to even pretend like he cares, but he doesn't really care either. Anyway, as a viewer who also wants to know what the fuck happened to Javi, it's like no one is asking this question genuinely, and it's very frustrating. And he was the one who Javi talked to and said this thing about like this that said he wasn't supposed to go back, and like so it like he's the only one in a position to know anything at all. So anyway, if he doesn't pass that information on, that'll be extra frustrating.
Right.
If Javi never speaks again, and like anyway, well, whatever.
Well, for all
Um,
the good it did
this
us.
is really the only proper mention of Javi in this episode. He does get briefly referenced later, but which I that part is like hilarious to me. Anyway, I'll come back to that later. But yeah, I just thought this was it's like a good argument, but it's yeah, he's like bullshitting. So anyway, um okay. At this point, oh, there's another lost line. So Melissa, backwards hat girl, says the lost line. What if the wilderness took her and the baby too? This is a Lindelof classic right here. We will plant this idea in your head, right? Right? What if she deported, Kevin?
Mm.
What if she deported? What if the bagel
Yeah,
deported?
like so many bagels and
It's
so
like
many toasters.
it's like you say it, you have a character say a thing because you want the audience to think that thing, not because you're saying it's true.
Yeah, so that later you can be like, why did you think that?
Yeah,
That's on you.
that's your fault. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, she says, yeah, maybe the wilderness took her and the baby. And then Gen follows up with yet another lost line saying maybe it will give us something back. And Aquila mentions that maybe it made the blizzard stop. Right? This
Blizzards
is
don't stop without spiritual intervention.
this is all like classic Lost stuff here.
Yep.
Gen is skeptical. Lottie says no. they're
That's
just
not
all
how it
they're just all
works.
making these like declarative
Everybody's
statements
making stuff up.
like they have any clue about any of this stuff. So Lottie says no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't trade. It gave them what they wanted. Shauna lived. And I'm like, okay, I'll
Yeah.
come back to that in a second. Maybe it will do the
Thanks a
same.
lot, Mari, for blowing our
Maybe
wish.
it'll do the same for Crystal.
Everybody knows that when you get the chance to make a wish, you wish for infinite wishes.
Yeah, it's like in Ghostbusters when Dan Aykroyd thinks about the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Yep.
Like it's like blank your mind, like don't wish for anything. And it's like I don't understand, like just because Mari blurted something out, like now they're committed to like that's the only thing they didn't get to wish for anything without saying it. Like I don't know. To me, this whole idea is frustrating. Like I don't know. I mean, maybe she's just saying it because she wants to like validate her like weird wilderness shit. And it's like, well, Shauna lives, so and Mari said, I hope Shauna doesn't die. So I guess maybe that like
But we're watching the birth of a religion.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
This
definitely.
is like people throughout time and across cultures have constructed cosmology to account for what they see.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
every
That are
time,
controlled by forces they don't really
yeah,
understand or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
or don't want to believe are just, you know, a coincidence, or
Natural
there
phenomena
was never
operating.
anything that they could have done to save that
Yeah.
fetus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the snow stopped when meteorologically it was done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Um okay, so yeah, maybe it'll do the same for Crystal. I don't think it will, Lottie. Where's all your like precious foreknowledge now?
I know, because they go and Crystal ain't there.
Well, that's a good point actually. If Crystal turns out to be alive, that's gonna be fucking crazy.
That
Um
uh, That'd be a
So
fucking
I guess you're right that this is setting that up as a possibility. They form a circle and they say, we hear the wilderness and it hears us. And then Minnie leaves to find Crystal. Gen and Melissa stay behind and talk about how it wouldn't be so bad if she was found dead. I mean, they don't say it. They don't say it out loud, but I think we all know that they're thinking we
And
could
Misty certainly
we could
knows.
have something to eat. We're all kind of hungry, and yeah, and Misty again over here. She's always lurking in this episode,
Yeah.
overhearing everything.
But Misty with her like, I won't let them eat you. It's like you're real high and mighty. You and Crystal were talking about how it would have been such a good idea if you'd made bone broth out of Jackie. Like you two were the only ones who had like a casual conversation about how good it was to have eaten a human.
Yeah, but Crystal was her friend.
But I'm just saying,
And she
like,
feels personally responsible for her death.
yes,
So
I understand that, but it's like, oh.
I get your point though. It's valid. I agree. It's sort of a weird line to draw.
Like, oh, all of a sudden it's weird to you to eat a friend?
I mean, I don't know if she was really friends with Jackie, but yeah,
No, but Shauna was.
yeah, Shauna was. It's true. Shauna's obviously more troubled by it than Misty is. Okay, so Misty leaves the cabin. We may or may not pick that up later. Um, Van picks up a blanket that's covering the symbol blanket. So we finally see what happened to
Yeah,
the symbol
yeah,
blanket. It's
we had
covered in
wondered
blood
that.
at this point. Il veut du sang. Shauna is sitting against the wall, remembering the dream. We see her having flashes of them eating the baby at this point. So again, reinforcing the idea that like she's still like thinking about that dream and what happened, and maybe not entirely sure if that happened or not. It kind of comes across that way. Or maybe she's just in deep denial about what really happened. It's not clear. It's not clear what's going on with Shauna in this episode to me, honestly. The past Shauna. Present day Shauna is clear, but past, it's like, what are you thinking? I'm not 100% sure. She picks up the blanket and throws it in the fire. So now that's we don't have to deal with the blanket anymore. Um, okay. Then
And nothing happens when she throws the blanket in the fire.
as far as I can tell, nothing happens. Yeah.
I was sort of waiting to see,
Yeah.
because we saw the thing when the blood dripped on
Right,
the
right.
blanket, the
The
birds
birds showed up. Yeah, yeah. Oh, we didn't check in with Nugget in this episode.
I
Do I
wow.
have to add Nugget to the list?
Let's add a nugget check.
We're much more likely to get follow up on Nugget than we are the postcards or Jessica.
Yeah, I do think we will.
All right. No dripping either. We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see if the dripping
Drip
thing
check.
comes back.
Drip
Yeah,
check.
drip check.
Nugget check. Postcard check.
Drip
Jessica
check.
Roberts.
Yeah, I should add all that stuff. Okay. So we see many of them yelling for Crystal outside. They arrive at the stump. I think this is like the ritual stump.
Yeah.
And Lottie tells the rest of them, except for Ty, to go ahead. So she and Ty are gonna just talk for a minute. She tells Ty that she knew where Javi was. Ty is skeptical and mentions that she stopped sleepwalking from the circle, so it was the bad one who knew that. So our point is like I don't have access to that right now. But Lottie says the bad one is not gone, and that's a good thing. And of
Oh.
course, we know that's true.
Well, we know it's not gone. Do we know that it's a good
Well,
thing and
the
not
first
good
part we know
thing?
is true. The
Yeah.
second part, I think, is definitely an open question.
Yeah.
Um, because Lottie is like got this
But
weird thing where she's all about acceptance, even if it's like some really dark shit. I don't know. It's like Lottie, do you know what the bad one did to the family pet? Because like I'm not sure that it doesn't mean any harm. She talks about that later. Anyway,
yeah,
we'll come back to that.
yeah, we'll see whether Lottie and Ty talk about the goodness, badness, morality, whatever of the bad one in the present day.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, they kind of do, so that's why I was bringing it up. There's a follow up scene later.
Okay.
Um,
Well, we'll get there.
yeah, it's just it's interesting. This is interesting to me because what I thought earlier in the season was that we were heading for like warring factions of Ty the bad one versus
Yeah,
Lottie, but it's actually turned into more that
they
Lottie's
need
cool
each
with the
other.
bad one and they're gonna like collaborate and be
Right.
like co priestesses or something. Like like it's implied they both have some kind of connection to what's going on in the wilderness and
And that they're gonna need each other, not
yeah, yeah.
fight each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So it seems like that's the direction we're heading here, based on this scene. Okay. So then we go back to Lottie's camp. Ty is painting a building with a tiny makeup brush. Clearly not pleased. You can tell by the way she's doing it that she doesn't view this as a
The fact
valuable
that she wrote
activity.
with this, or
Yeah, I think that's
it's a sign.
indeed. Um, oh, and she sees Lottie and complains about the treatment. Lottie says, "Okay, tell me your problems." And Ty, she didn't say it like that, but that was the point.
Hmm.
Ty says she's sleepwalking again. This is the scene actually.
Yeah.
This is the scene where Lottie says that the bad one had a connection to the wilderness and had wisdom, and Ty shouldn't suppress her. And maybe she doesn't mean any harm. She just doesn't want to be suppressed. That's the point she makes in this scene.
Yes.
This is where I want Ty to be like, because Ty says like she wants to hurt my family, which I don't think is clear. To be fair, like I don't know that the bad one intends harm for Sammy or Simone.
The car accident.
But yeah, that's a good point. Although she did put the symbol on her hand, which anyway,
Yeah.
it's
What
it's
does that mean though?
it's not clear what that means. I agree. So yeah, the car accident is a good point though. But like a more obvious point is she beheaded the family dog and made it alter. Like if that's not meaning harm, I don't know what is, Lottie. But of course, Lottie doesn't know about that, so I can't really blame her for saying
Yeah, that's why
this.
it's not gonna mention it because it doesn't really fit.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's like
Perhaps because that was season one and this is season two.
yeah, 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 yeah. And I think like uh I think there's also this thing where uh Lottie's like, I mean, I think it's clear from later in the episode that she's conflicted about this idea, but there's like part of her who
Yeah.
believes that you should just embrace your dark side and
Yeah.
let it out. Like suppressing it is just going to make things worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I feel like she knows some of the stuff that happened. There's a lot of stuff we don't know, about it, but she knows some of the stuff that happened in the wilderness. So and she's like okay with it, at least she claims to be okay with it. I'm not 100% clear if she's like fully okay with it or convincing herself or whatever, but anyway, yeah, so this is the follow-up scene. Okay. So then we go over to Shauna sitting at a tree. Misty comes up and asks about the treatment. Shauna realizes that Bruce chewed through the rope and ran away. Misty offers some bait. They call for Bruce. Sean still thinks they will make her kill Bruce. Misty says, "LOL, just pretend it's Adam," which is
Oh,
like,
Misty.
which is like, read the room, Misty.
Yeah, she's such a knack for saying the right thing.
It's like that's not that's a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, this is an example of a line where I feel like it's partially a character thing, but also partially just a reminder. It's putting the idea of the Adam back in the fact that Adam killed Shauna. I'm sorry, the Shauna killed Adam back in the viewer's mind because they're gonna like reveal a thing about that later in the episode. That's how I felt watching it again. I'm like, that seems really random, weird thing to mention at this point, but like knowing where they're going, it kind of makes sense. Shauna acts offended. Misty defends herself and the help she provided in that situation. Shauna says, "Thank you for having a hobby to be the perfect serial killer." Misty says, "You're not that innocent." Shauna says, "I know that." Um, they hear Bruce and Shauna picks him up. And then an acolyte arrives and tells Misty that Lisa's looking for her and she should be in the tank, and Misty makes some excuses.
If you ever find yourself saying, "Why does everybody keep calling me a serial killer?" then you might want to take a look at your life.
Yeah, it's funny. I also thought this like "you're not that innocent" line was interesting because it kind of seemed loaded. It kind of seemed like it's implying stuff we don't know.
Yeah.
Like not just that she beat up Lottie. I feel like there's got to be a bit more
Yeah,
to
well, I
this.
guess I thought it might be an allusion to them eventually finding out that she caused Crystal's death. But of course, it also just feels like an
No, no,
allusion
no,
to.
no. Misty says that to Shauna.
Well, I mean, we know Shauna's not that. So
Sure,
I
sure,
mean,
sure. But we don't know that much about what she did in the wilderness, and it seems to
well,
me
it
like
seems like she was the one who skinned the bodies.
that's true. That's true.
And she was intimately familiar with the look that people get in their eyes when they realize they're going to
We
die.
do know that as well. Indeed, indeed. But it's still quite vague. Like, so I'm just saying, like, it seemed to me like there was a slight hint about like the depths that Shauna descended
Yeah.
into. And this episode seems to be building to that as
Oh
well.
yeah. Well, we know we're getting more of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's just interesting to me when the adults make allusions to things that haven't fully appeared in the flashbacks yet.
yeah.
So I just feel it's notable when that happened. Like
Yeah.
there was these lines in season one where it's Van Ty and not Van, they're in a van. It's Shauna Ty and
Van the van.
it's Shauna Ty and Natalie in the van. It's during that like ransom plot.
Yeah.
And they're like, we wouldn't have made it if it weren't for Natalie. Like they have this line that's like implying this thing that we still don't know
Yeah.
about.
We'll see
So
when they pay that off.
well, hey, I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, I guess it's like, she hunted. She did all that hunting.
Right. People brought that up. That's the obvious thing. Could it mean something else? Who knows?
No.
But it's just notable to me when it's either a recipe for being disappointed later or something they'll pick up later or both. So anyway, because we got to do a Lindelof shuffle here. What if it's
Yeah.
both? Okay. So right. Wait, I lost my place. Oh, right. Right. Shauna says, I know that. Oh, yeah, Missy. Oh, I got to the end of the scene. Missy goes back to the
Yeah.
tank, basically. Okay. Um, back at the cabin, Misty, Aquila, and Mari are looking for Crystal. And by the cabin, I mean outside, of course. I just refer to the general flashbacks as the cabin because they're usually in the cabin, but not in this case. Okay. Misty cries. The other two agree that she can go back if this is too hard for her. It's clearly a ruse.
Yeah.
Mari is
Mari's clearly not buying it.
obviously skeptical here. It's like, okay, yeah, go
Yeah.
back.
Great.
Misty says, as after they leave, I'm not gonna let them eat you, Kristen.
Another great line.
It's very funny. Okay. Um, and then we see Ben crutching himself through the snow. I didn't really know how do you describe walking with crutches? I
Well,
came up with crutching himself.
I mean, journeying, trekking.
Okay. Ben treks with the aid of crutches through the snow and falls. Very, very brief scene here. And Shauna goes in the meat shed and looks at Jackie's corner. There's like a there's like a cushion there. I just find that a bit odd.
Yeah.
Like, here, dead Jackie, here's a cushion for I don't understand.
Yeah, right. She was not sitting in. Yeah, I guess it's like she put makeup on her. She had like taken her a cushion.
Yeah, like it's I don't know, it's weird. Okay. And she tries to talk to Jackie, but Jackie doesn't appear
This is
because
a really sad scene.
she's the actor is not available at this point, or whatever. And then Shauna cries. Yeah, it's yeah, I mean, Shauna is probably going through things the most in this episode, amazingly.
Yeah, definitely.
um like she has the big emotional climax in this episode, even though there's significant elements with the other characters as well, but I do feel it goes the farthest. And calling back to that earlier stuff where she's like talking to Jackie in the shed and putting makeup on her
Yeah.
dead body and then like eating a chunk off her, it's like all that stuff was really. Anyway, it's like she wants to be able to go back and like talk to Jackie now, to like somehow like.
Yeah, and then yeah, and it's in this dialogue with what's going on with Ben because
Yeah, yeah.
she wants to find refuge in this delusion.
Connection with the past, and yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's very similar kind
And
of
his
idea.
has come to an end.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Although, what's going to happen to him now? Now that, well, anyway.
well, hey,
Yeah, but I found that to be a really powerful and sad scene.
yeah, it is definitely. It is. The way I describe it,
I know, yeah. I know, and I know that's how it goes, but every so often there'll be a scene where it's like, yeah, 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 but this let's acknowledge the emotional
I do recommend that you don't just listen to my description of the
mhm.
episode, but that you actually watch
There
it.
are certain aspects of the show that are not captured by the replay.
Yeah. It's not, yeah. This show is not just about what happens on screen. Literally, there's an experience of watching it that makes it worth actually watching. It's okay. So,
Ugh.
back to Lottie's camp. Shauna arrives at the barn with Bruce and says he ate some rope. The acolyte says he's Shauna's responsibility and he calls the goat a kid. And she demands that someone check out the goat, but the acolyte refuses. She sees Lottie. Everyone's like, this is like a pattern for these scenes. Like, oh fuck my treatment. Oh, there's Lottie. Hey Lottie, fix it for me. They're like such like whiny babies in a way. Anyway, like, nah, Lottie, I don't like my treatment. Do it for me. I don't know. Anyway,
I want to talk to your manager.
she goes, yeah, Lottie's manager. So she goes outside and tells Lottie that she will not kill the goat, no matter how much they tell her to kill the goat. She's not killing that goat. Stop telling me kill the goat. All right. So anyway, Lottie says, "You don't have to kill the goat. No one ever said that. You just made that up." She doesn't say that, but like that's what I'm
Mhm.
thinking.
Yeah.
No, literally, no one ever said this. So she cries, and then at this point says, like, "What's going on here?" She says she kept Callie at arm's length out of fear that she would die or was never real to begin with, and she can't let go. Something's broken, and Lottie consoles her. Also an insufficient explanation of this scene. Back to back scenes where I can't quite do justice, but that's sort of a bit the it was more or less clear, I think, making it a baby goat, all of that, that like that's the thread they were trying to pull on, connecting the thing in the past with the thing with Callie with the thing with the baby goat. All of that is like pulling on this particular thread. Okay.
You know, I like I just had this thought of, well, how convenient that she picked this treatment, whereas this treatment wouldn't really work for Misty.
Right.
But then I
Right.
thought, well, what if
I already take care of Caligula. Like, what? This is
right,
easy.
right. Um, because the sensory tank presumably works for anyone who just needs to be confronted with whatever it is that they're not confronting.
Yeah.
But it would be a great sleight, like, I was about to say sleight of hand. There's a second sleight of hand mention in the same podcast, but I don't even know if that is it. Like misdirection, I guess. Um, if they already knew, Lottie had already decided what each person was going to be made to do, or at least what Shauna and Misty would be made to do.
Hmm.
And just whatever they had pulled, whatever word they had chosen, they would have
She was
built.
just gonna call it
Yeah.
that. Like, yeah, actually, I already forgot.
Oh, the goat is self care,
Yeah, the goat self care. What was Misty's thing? Let's see.
guidance.
Oh, guidance. Yeah, so like you could totally
Goat
just switch
guiding.
the
You're going to
two.
guide this
You
goat.
could totally say taking care of the goat's guidance and going in the tank as self care. Like it would
Yeah,
be very easy.
those sensory deprivation tanks, there are spas that have those, and it's like, it seems intrigue. I've never done it. It seems intriguing and also terrifying.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so what do we got?
Okay.
Yeah,
So
no, that's a great scene. This is an intense scene. Again, blowing right through it. You kind of miss how moving this is. This is a big personal revelation. Um, yeah, about everything that Sean has been carrying with her since the wilderness. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a question I still have is like, how much does Jeff know about what happened? You know, how much did she put in the diary? Like, it doesn't seem very likely that she would have been like writing a lot of details in the diary at this point in the past.
Well, we have not
So,
seen her writing in the diary in a long time.
yeah, so it's just like, like I don't know. It almost makes me think he has like a really fragmented. It's almost like the oh, my memory's so hazy. Like, oh, like, oh, Jeff, I didn't write everything down in the diary, you know?
Yeah, but this is like, yeah, yeah. How aware has she even been about these things until now? How much of it was operating on a subconscious level? Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that I should have realized earlier when we knew there was a mystery of like what happened with the pregnancy in the wilderness and so on, that like there would be a thread of her disconnection with Callie versus what happened in the wilderness. Like, I think that's in retrospect it seems obvious, but
yeah,
like
yeah.
for some reason it never occurred to me that they would sort of frame it that way. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just always surprised when I don't expect the obvious. Okay, are you ready for next bit here? So Lisa opens the tank for Misty, and Misty finally gets in. She floats in the water, and then a vision begins. We see Walter, and suddenly a musical sequence of Caligula singing begins. And then backstage, Misty goes on to talk to Caligula, who was, just singing, played by theater and cinema's John Cameron Mitchell, in a cameo that no one was asking for or expected.
Yeah, it's uh amazing. Um, you cannot mistake the voice. Um,
Yeah, I definitely noticed that the second time through. I was like, oh yeah, this really does sound like a Hedwig song.
yeah. Hedwig is one of two musicals I know.
Yeah, yeah. What's the other one?
I
Sound
was
of Music?
afraid you were gonna ask that. Yeah, I don't
Singing in the
know.
Rain?
I know a little
The
bit
Wizard
of
of
a few.
Oz?
Wizard of Oz, that's probably the one that I know the most. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But there's some good ones. Tell us your favorite.
Yeah, right.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors.
Not
Yeah.
as good on rewatch as I thought as a Grease. Horrible.
Grease.
I
Yeah.
watch that every day that we had to do indoor recess.
Grease is a big one.
It is a
Every
big
day you had to do indoor recess. You watched Grease.
probably not, but it felt that way. We might she's gonna wait for us to start talking again. Her sense of time
You
is
have to say a
amazing.
few words
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
just pause.
I am podcasting now. Yeah, so this is a scene. What did you make of this scene?
I haven't finished.
Oh,
Let me just finish. Let me just finish the
of
scene.
course not.
Yeah, I just feel like it's easier to
Yes,
talk
please.
about it once I finish it. Okay, sorry, we just stopped on the cameo. Misty wonders what other people think of her. Caligula says, "What do you see when you look at yourself?" Noting that he's sitting in front of a mirror because it's like backstage. It's so weird to like have a vision where not only do you see like a musical theater production, but also you envision going backstage to talk to the person that was playing Caligula in the thing. Anyway, um, okay, noting that Misty has done so much for the rest of them, as she just mentioned in a previous scene. It's like a coincidence. A phone rings, and it's Walter. He pushes some phone buttons, and they make a heart appear here. This is it gets very fanciful at this point. Misty thanks Caligula and emerges from the tank, goes to the kitchen and uses the phone to call Walter. She leaves a message apologizing and says he was right about the thing and it's hard for her to trust and she should have pushed him away and she hangs up. So uh so being right about the thing here clearly is referring to the thing about Adam, right? He's like you killed Adam or you helped your friend kill Adam or something, or you killed Adam for your friend, whatever. So this is what you were referencing earlier, that like it is interesting that she chooses to reference that here. She definitely didn't need to do that. I'm of two minds about it. The first mind is it's what you said, that Walter is actually some kind of FBI agent or law enforcement or whatever, and this is setting up for like a follow up based on the final scene of the episode. My second thought is it's just reinforcing it for the viewer. It's just like calling back the Adam stuff because there's going to be a revelation about what happened with Adam, and she was involved with the body disposal. So, so I feel like it could just be that, and that was part of what like caused her to like get out of the car and tell him to go away. So, anyway.
Yeah, so there's all that. But then I do sort of wonder in terms of the first chunk of the vision whether this experience will make her any less desperate for affirmation from others. Could it be that John Cameron Mitchell as Caligula was able to get through to her in any way?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's weird like you know, uh like I mean he doesn't actually say this, but it's like, oh, you shouldn't worry so much what other people think of you. Think about this guy who likes you a lot. I don't know. It's just like it feels a bit like
Yeah, it's fitting two different things together that need to happen. One is like some kind of self-reflection because that's the point of the treatment. And also moving us forward plot-wise with Walter.
I mean, we knew we had to go back to Walt. Like, if
Yeah.
they ended Walter there, that would just be like the
No, we know
crappiest.
Walter's coming back. I mean, there is a third option, which is that Walter's going to be helpful to them.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely possible. Yeah, that like they could actually team up and like help with like doing some kind of cover up or whatever they have to do to like deal with this police situation. Yeah, it could totally go in that direction. He could also end up dead. Like I feel like there's several options of where they can go. And yeah, I really don't have a clear expectation. I do feel like it kind of feels like it'll be too repetitive if he's also a cop like Jay
Yeah.
was, because it is basically the same reveal.
Yeah.
It also feels it also feels too much like Adam Martin for him to end up dead.
Yeah.
So that makes me think they'd go a third way,
Yeah.
which would be he helps and doesn't die. But maybe they did set up this idea that like, he has a boat in case he needs to like go on the run. So like the third possibility would be he goes on the run. You know, he takes some piece of evidence, or he feels like he got in too deep and needs to like hide out, or I don't know, just some reason why he has to be like off the show, without actually just being killed.
Hmm.
That's my current most likely thought about what's gonna happen with Walter. But it would have been like the sloppiest, weirdest writing to have him leave in that scene, and that's the last we ever see.
For sure. Yeah.
It's like, who would have expected that?
Yeah, we know he's coming.
Okay. But yeah, it's a fun, fanciful sequence, but also much like the one that Lottie had earlier with the mall, and where it was like you're freezing to death. Like it seems very clear what the point is, so it's kind of just like a fun way to make an obvious point.
Yeah.
That's how I see it, at least.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we go back to the cabin.
With buttons in Morse code. When you watched it again, did you see? When it was happening, I was like, oh man, this is like some Morse code shit, and the internet is gonna be losing their minds over what
Don't
does this mean?
don't go back to like, oh, Saeed was blinking Morse code to Jack. Like,
Yeah.
maybe he's just blinking. I don't think it's Morse code, but I didn't investigate.
The button doesn't do anything. We were dead the
So
whole time. Sorry, I was just trolling you.
turns into a robot.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a robot phone. I do like that it's an old school like phone with like, uh like the buttons that make the noise, you know.
Yeah, I love that that's old school now, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's got like a cord and, you know,
Yeah, yeah. Show a kid, show a Gen Z or a fucking rotary
Genzier.
phone and blow their minds. Yeah, Gen Z.
Genzi. All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's Genzi.
Let's Gen
Genzi.
Z going
There we
again.
go. Okay. So back at the cabin, Misty goes to where Crystal fell and digs through the snow, but is unable to find her. She
But she does find many, many turds that have been dumped because, like, she's digging around there. I'm like, maybe get a stick. Do you remember why you were there? That's your poop bucket dumping.
Oh shit, that's actually a good point. I didn't even think about that.
You're
They were
just
dumping
like,
the shit bucket there.
yeah,
Good point.
gross.
That is really gross. I feel like they didn't want us to think about that
No, they
because I
don't.
didn't think about it, and also they don't show any shit in the scene.
Right, right. But anyway, any turds down there will be frozen.
That's true, and that basically
So,
sanitizes them, so it should be
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
She apologizes. She climbs back up the cliff, and at this point sees that Ben is sitting there. He stands up and goes to the edge and gets closer. He asks Misty to push him off, but she refuses. She tries to talk him down with manipulation, saying, "We'll eat you." And he's like, "I don't care." And then she tries to threaten the world to tell, threaten the world, threaten him to tell the world about their love story. And then he impregnated Shada, and he impregnated all of them, and also he's gay. It's like, okay, this is
She's casting a wide net.
this is a weird this is a weird set of things
Frantically
to
grasping at
allege.
straws to see, you know. Ugh.
Yeah, she's just really going for like every possible threat she can think of. And then Ben says, "Do it." Um, So finally, she cries and says she tried so hard to keep the baby alive and begs him not to do it. The point here is that she doesn't want to let someone die again. She doesn't want to be there when someone dies again and she's unable to stop it. I think that's
Yeah.
the point. And so Ben steps back from the edge. Misty talks down Ben from suicide.
Misty successfully manipulates another
What
person.
the fuck? Well, the thing is, I mean, at least my reading of it is that this last bit that actually convinced him isn't manipulation. I think she was actually genuine there. I don't know. Am I wrong? She does cry earlier in manipulation, I think, but it comes across to me like the thing that breaks him down is like he actually believes her now. Like he actually feels sorry for her that she went through this thing and it didn't work and the baby didn't survive and now she's in the position of like watching the love of her like jump off a cliff, you know, and it's like okay, I can't do it, you know, that's too much, you know. I feel like it's genuine. I don't know, you tell me, you know. there's
She,
no there's no obvious indication that it's a lie the way there is with the earlier stuff.
you know, I do think she feels genuinely sad that she couldn't save the baby. I do think she's genuinely desperate at the idea that he might kill himself. I still think that she's engaging in manipulation, even in this line. Even if it is true, she's saying it out loud to him to manipulate him,
Well, yeah, I guess you can go
to
down.
make her own emotional needs more important to him in that moment than his own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can go down the like Cersei road where it's like it's not a lie, but it's still manipulation.
Yeah, well, there's this whole thing about, you know, this whole, well, whatever. This idea that oh, suicide is selfish because of the way that you're making other people feel.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's not obvious to me how we ought to feel about the outcome of this scene.
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree. I'm just saying, I feel like Misty's being genuine, even if it is manipulative.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't think that she doesn't believe the things that she
Yeah,
says.
yeah, yeah. Whereas like earlier when she was crying about Crystal, like trying to find Crystal and stuff, like I think that was bullshit. To get her the chance to
Yeah,
go
yeah, yeah.
look for Crystal's body to prevent
Yeah,
them
and to make
from.
her look like she's not a psychopathic murderer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like that's like more transparent. So
Yep.
the other thing I'm realizing now that's hovering in the background that she's not saying for obvious reasons is this is also where Crystal fell.
I mean, I think what she really feels that she's not going to say is that I can't watch you die after accidentally causing the
Yeah.
death of my only friend.
Yeah. So I feel like that's the other thing she's upset
I
about.
think she's way more upset. I don't, that's the thing. It's not that I don't think that she's upset about the baby, but I don't think she's particularly upset about the baby.
Yeah. Relatively
I
speaking, I
don't think
agree.
she is. Anyway.
I mean, yeah, I think she's upset about her sense that she failed, but
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of like what she really cares about most,
Yeah.
it's definitely the Crystal
Yeah.
thing. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Um,
And where the fuck is Crystal's body?
this is a question. So
So did it get dragged away and eaten by a predator? In which case, we don't see any tracks. Maybe it
yeah,
got snowed away.
yeah.
We haven't heard anything about some, you know, big animals like this. Will we ever find out what happened to the body?
I think I mean there's basically two
Did it
possibilities.
avalanche down to a lower spot and they're just fucking with us?
Yeah. So there's two possibilities. One, the body is there or just nearby and she just didn't find it. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Second possibility is something happened to the body. So either miraculous, I don't think it can be true though, because she tried to do like CPR and it would be crazy if it turned out she was actually still alive. But you're right that like the earlier thing in the episode set us up to think that that's a possibility. So I guess I should say three possibilities. She's still alive miraculously.
I mean, they would that would heavily point to supernatural island intervention.
Now, if she's still alive,
Wilderness.
I would suspect that whoever was involved with Javi uh, came and like helped because I don't feel like she could have gone on her own. It must have been someone else. So anyway, that other person maybe is involved, or it's just an animal. You know, one of these
Mm-hmm.
possibilities should be true. I don't know which one, but it's a mystery. So we'll see. We'll see what they tell us.
Yeah.
Okay. Ben survives for another day. I still think he's gonna die and they're gonna eat him before the end of the season. So this is the scene with the butt meat line.
But me,
So
it's
okay. So we go back to
that butt meat line. That that's a great line. That's a great line. I love this show has some lines that you can just feel really confident have never been recorded before. Like, I'll even eat your high protein butt meat. Is that what it
yeah,
is?
that's what it is.
It's so great. So great.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's yeah, they get opportunities to make unusual
You
statements.
know, I love that it's like you've clearly thought about this.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I think that's sort of a undercurrent theme of the flashbacks is how like they're all aware that they've crossed the line into cannibalism and they'll probably have to do it again, but no one's really confronting it directly. They're kind of just whispering in the background, thinking it on the
They're looking
edges.
forward to having butt meat to eat.
Yeah. But they're not like openly saying it. They're not saying we need to find Crystal so we can eat her dead body, right? No
Right.
one's quite ready to like say that in the open. Like
Right.
they can whisper about it, they can vaguely allude to it, but like
Right.
they haven't quite like
Let's
crossed
go
that line yet.
foraging. Wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, are you? Yeah. So we go back to Lottie's camp. Ty goes out at night. Takes off her wedding ring. Van is there drinking. That's what she foraged. Ty joins. They kiss and then they pull back. Van says she has cancer and has months to live. It's really weird to just read this casually. Ty is angry that Van didn't tell her, but Van defends that they weren't really in touch. Misty shows up and calls them over.
Yeah, I feel like this is a great reason to stop paying rent on your business. Like,
Yeah,
when
it
you have
definitely
the
puts
money,
that
it's
in a
like,
different
no,
context.
yeah, what could possibly matter?
It's not just like I'm in like depression. It's like, yeah, like I have months to live. I don't
Mhm.
really care about my
Yeah.
bills.
But are we going to get a Lottie's camp wilderness god is going to save her?
Yeah, I mean, I think this can only go two ways. The first way, the first way is they only got Lauren Ambrose for a season. She's actually gonna die. The second way is, yeah, she's miraculously cured, and it's Rose from Lost,
Yeah,
basically, where they can imbue it with meaning if they
yeah,
want, you know?
yeah,
Of course, in the case of Lost, like, it's kind of validated that the island has healing powers. It's not really
yeah.
that ambiguous. In this show, I think it'll be more ambiguous. Okay. Yeah, at this point we go to Lottie sitting in therapy with her therapist. All right, I got a lot to say about this scene, so let's just get through it first. So she thinks that is send key it is key sending her friends for them to be together, and it feels wonderful, but she's afraid. The therapist says, don't repress yourself. Maybe it feels this way because in the past she was free, her most authentic self, and why not embrace that again? Lottie says, in my favorite vague ass line of the episode, we hurt each other. People died. This is her line. Something happened out there. That's what it reminds me of. Anyway, the therapist says, everything of value comes with risk, loss, and consequence. Lottie says, are you saying what I think you're saying? Thanks, Lottie, for clarifying. And then the therapist turns into the Antler Queen and says, you tell me, does a hunt that has no violence feed anyone? And then at this point, there's a knock at the door for Charlotte. And we see that, in fact, they're still at Lottie's camp. I didn't reveal that at the beginning. Surprise! She didn't go to the therapist in the middle of all this. She's been there the whole time. And we see the therapist isn't actually there. The room actually changes, and Lottie actually like gets up and goes to where the chair was and is like, "Where the fuck is the therapist?" Like, anyway, she freaks out for a bit and realizes that the entire therapy session was a hallucination. So this is fucking crazy. So I did time codes and a thorough review. I looked at the previously on scene with the therapist. Is same therapist and the same office. That earlier in the scene they show the same office. There's a coffee table, there's a couch, there's a chair right there, there's a desk, and the bookshelf is directly behind the desk. But when the room changes, it's still got all the same furniture, but first of all, instead of a window on the wall, there's a door there now. The bookshelf is not directly behind the desk, but perpendicular to that now. The chair is much farther away from where the couch is. The coffee table looks totally different. It's it's vaguely similar, but you can tell that it's a totally different room. The most obvious thing is the door. Like the door wasn't there in the therapist's office. So, like, the room totally changes. So, she was having a vision. It's very much like Ben's thing. She was having a vision not just of the therapist, but of the entire office. Like,
Yeah,
she was hallucinating the entire therapy. And this scene, for me, calls into question because this is the therapist from the first therapy scene
yeah.
that she goes to in this season, where she's like, and they play it in this episode. I think I need to up my meds, right? So the question for me is, she's never been, she's, has she never been going to therapy this entire time? She's just been like sitting and hallucinating therapy. Like, that's what it seems to imply.
I don't know about that.
In that first scene, it's like, oh, my regular therapist isn't here. Like, there's a substitute, you know? And like, I thought that was a little weird. The therapist has said some somewhat weird things. And
Right, and the regular therapist never came
and the
back.
regular therapist never came back, and they've always cut to it out of context. Like they've never shown Lottie traveling to a place. They've
Yeah,
never, you know. I think there's very much room to believe she's never left the camp for therapy, and that she's actually been hallucinating the therapy the entire time, and she doesn't even have meds. Like, you know, the whole thing that is a game changer to me about, and this also relates to like what happened to Lottie after she got out of that place in Switzerland. You know, because I thought that she had maintained therapy and she was on medication and stuff, and now this makes me think that actually going to therapy was a sign that the hallucinations were returning as much as the obvious hallucinations were.
Right. She
You know,
hallucinates that she's going to
she
therapy.
hallucinates that she's going to therapy.
Huh.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't think she's been in there. I don't know. I'm just saying that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Because it's weird if the earlier therapy scene was real, but then she hallucinates a fake version with the same substitute therapist. Like, who also, even though she was a lot gentler about it, but she was also pushing Lottie in the same direction. Like, even in that scene with, no, you don't need to up your meds. Like, maybe you just need to embrace your visions. Like, she's on a very similar page to the fake therapist in this scene.
Right.
The illusory therapist who maybe is just an avatar for the Antler Queen in Lottie's mind. Like, like that's what's implied, at least by the scene. So anyway,
Yeah.
to me, like this was my most unexpected reveal of the episode, where I was like, "What? That was not real? Are you serious? Like, huh? I don't know. It just reframes the entire thing, and it calls into question the whole backstory that we don't know yet. So anyway, this is a crazy ass scene, and this whole line of like, "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" is like, well, you tell me, Lottie. And like this God has made me laugh. We hurt each other. People died. I love when they have these like
Dramatic understatements.
vague as possible lines that where it's like technically I'm sure she's not wrong. You can't disprove that, but it's so vague it could mean such a range of things. It could just mean what we've seen so far, right? Shauna's gonna punch her in this episode. I mean, they've hurt each other enough anyway. And people have died already. Plenty of people have died already, right? It doesn't have to mean anything more than that, but we know it does, right?
Justin, does a hunt without violence feed sometimes? That's another great line. That feels like a totally new line. Although it also seems like something that is maybe in like Shakespeare or something.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah, and
hunt
it's
without
like it's like
violence
what
feed
is the
anyone.
implication? Like they're gonna get together and like do violence, but it'll feed them emotionally. Like, is that the implication? Like it's a very
Maybe it'll
strange thing
save
to
them.
say. Like I have no idea what the implication of this is. And by having Lottie say, I are you saying what I think you're saying? It's like she knows what it means, but I don't think I do. Like it's not obvious to me. I get that she's
I think she
afraid.
seems like embrace the antler queen, the bad one, the embrace the like this the savagery.
Yeah, so but it just makes me wonder specifically like what is the violence? What is the thing that like if the antler queen is saying, no, 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 the violence in the past was fine because it fed you. It's like, okay, what violence are you going to do now that's going to feed you, I guess, more emotionally because they have food.
Right.
But that's not the problem anymore.
Right.
So, like it's just it's not obvious what that is supposed to mean to me.
Right.
I get that Lottie is like freaking out because she's having visions again. She hadn't had them for a while. I'm assuming that's true. Of course, if she was hallucinating therapy this whole time, it's definitely not true. Is it possible that she just realized in this scene that she's been hallucinating therapy this entire time?
I don't think so. I think the implication is that she hallucinated a different therapist. That
Yeah. Okay.
that
That
she
makes
was
sense.
going to
She
a
was going to a real
therapist.
one, and the substitute one has been the hallucination. But it's clear from this scene that she didn't realize it was hallucination until this scene,
Right.
which is kind of crazy. Okay. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So Nat has gathered them all to talk about what they learned that day. The rest are just passing a tequila bottle, this advanced tequila bottle. Shauna reveals it. Nat's kind of disappointed, but they talk her down and sit in a circle. She still refuses to drink. Shauna says, I lost my goat, but I found him again. That's actually the end of the scene. I love how like she briefly summarizes her whole story for this episode
Yeah. That was the takeaway.
with a simple declarative statement. Okay.
Gross.
So then Lottie walks outside and sees them sitting in a circle inside and goes in there and tells them all to go home. This was her takeaway. Because she's afraid of whatever the
She's afraid.
implications are, right?
She's afraid of what will happen if they
That's
stay
clearly the
together. Yeah.
point, right? So Van invites her to join them. Lottie tries to refuse, but finally relents and does join them. Then we get a montage of shots of them taking shots and revelry. They're all laughing and smiling, and later, Nat asks Misty about Walter. Misty explains. Lottie says she's happy for Misty. Shauna asks what Walter does, and Misty says, well, he doesn't have a job. He's dedicated to the passionate pursuit of knowledge.
He's a professional Redditor.
Ty jokes about him being in prison, and they all have an LOL. Misty says that this is okay. I'm gonna say more later. Misty says that Nat slept with Kevin with a Y, and Nat says that Misty watched us, and then Misty deflects and says that first summer she's about to reminisce about something from the past, but Van interrupts, and the rest of them prevent her from talking about the past. Lottie says that's normal. Shauna says she's fine, not remembering. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped a part. She says she remembers things, but some things are hazier. Lottie says that's normal. That's what I meant to say. Because Nat asks how much they remember from the past. That's what Van says. She remembers things, but some things are hazier. I think the point is they all feel that way.
Yeah.
Even though technically I think Van says that. Lottie says that's normal. Shauna says she's fine not remembering. Lottie says the repressed things come out in one way or another. Van laughs it off and leaves the circle. Ty goes over and offers a specialist to help with the cancer because she's like wealthy and stuff. Van walks away as Lightning Crashes by the seminal 90s band Live comes on, and they all get up and dance, and we get a back and forth montage that almost but not quite closes out the episode. So yeah, so let's see. I think there's a couple things I wanted to say about this scene. um there's a question there's questions here about Walter. I think that's definitely setting up the question of what's going on with Walter, and I feel like something's coming there. It's interesting, like this scene is almost like a scene that like a classic scene that you kind of want at the end of a TV show, where like the characters get together and they talk about stuff that like they went through that the others don't know about. Like it's funny that they bring up this like, oh, Nat slept with Kevin. Yeah, well, Misty watched us on a camera, and no, I didn't. And and then Misty's about to go, hey, you remember that first summer when, and it's like, oh, they're just gonna like hang out and talk about the past, and it's like, no, put a stop. This is not the end of the show. They're not ready for that. And also, even though we have seen the first summer, they're not even going to talk about the first summer, right? Like the first summer was the least horrifying part of what they went through, seemingly. Like what bad even happened that first summer besides like the crash and Laura Lee died. Like for the most part, like it seems clear that like winter was the onset of like the really bad things happening. Jackie's death was the beginning of the winter, and then we have all this other shit. Javi disappears and all that stuff. The baby, Crystal, et cetera, et cetera. It's all piling up at this point. But yeah, anyway, it was like a tease to the audience, because it's like, oh, I'd love for them to just sit and trade stories about the past, but like they also can't do that. But also, I have to admit, it doesn't make sense that they want to be doing that. So at this point, like they're not ready to just casually LOL about stories from being in the wilderness.
Right.
And let's see, is there something else I wanted to say? No, I think that's all I wanted to say here. Ready to
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, you said it all.
Okay. So then we go back to the cabin. Most of them sit by the fire as Shauna comes in. I guess she was in the meat shed. I guess that's the implication. Missy is humming the song. Another one of these like coincidence things. Um, did Shauna remember that? Probably not. Everything's hazy. Oh, that was the thing I wanted to say. Just to reinforce your point from earlier that like whatever they don't seem to remember, well, their memories are hazy. So we can just say that they didn't remember that thing. And the worse it was, the more likely that they've repressed it, right? So like it's both plausible and like fuck you. Like, come on.
Yep.
Anyway. All right. So Misty is humming the song. Shauna questions her about it and then punches her in the face. So Misty's the first one to get punched here. Um,
Deserved.
then we go back to Lottie's camp. It's snowing. Another connection. Then we go back to the cabin. Nat steps in and defends Misty. Shauna accuses them of eating the baby. All of them, not just Nat and Misty. Um, she bites Van, and Van steps away, and Lottie steps forward at this point. Lottie's camp. They frolic in the snow. Back to the cabin. Shauna punches Lottie. And then Lottie says, Travis, take Javi to the bedroom, and puts her hands behind her back. Lottie tells Shauna to let it out. We need you. Shauna punches and kicks Lottie as the others watch. Lottie's camp, frolicking, cabin, punching, back and forth, back and forth. That's pretty much what it is for quite some time as the song continues. Um, and then finally at the cabin, Lottie's very bloody and beaten up as Shauna relents and makes sure she's still alive. But of course, we know she has to be still alive. There's literally no way out of that. It's like, did anyone think Lottie was dead? That would be like, anyway, impossible. Okay. She is, of course. Shauna goes outside and sits and looks at her bloody hands and puts them in the snow. And that is where we leave things at the cabin for this episode. Okay. So, so I think the first part of this is fine. Like, Shauna's got some pent up anger. I think that's clear. Okay. I think we can all agree. Um, so the first thing, before I get to that, I just want to say, I just think it's funny that Lottie's like, Travis, take Javi to the bedroom. Like, what? He survived in the wilderness by himself, seemingly, for 2 months, and you don't think he can handle someone getting punched? Like, what? Like, what? Like, I just found that very odd. Like, such a weird line to draw. Oh, Javi's too young for this. Like, he's there with you, right? Like, like what are you gonna do like when you're eating the next person? Okay, Javi, go in the bedroom while we eat a person. Like,
And
like
then they just bring him a burger.
this is
I was
not.
like, where did this burger come from? And they're like, we found it on a burger tree. Yeah, I mean, I think the point of that line is just to say that she's, got a very deliberate approach to this, that she's welcoming this, that this is not, you know, that she's thinking through a plan to sort of martyr herself to this thing.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I just
Yeah,
it strikes a weird chord with me. I don't know. Like, I'm just like, I don't know. And like, Lottie didn't really. It's not like she's like. It's not like they portrayed her as being like overly protective of Javi or anything. It's like the first time she's ever really
it's just
given a
supposed to
shit.
build up drama. God, you don't have to pick apart everything.
I do. That's
Yeah,
literally
I
what I
know.
have to do.
Well,
No, I'm sorry. It just struck me as odd. But okay, I can move on. I just wanted to say that. Okay. So the other thing I wanted to say while I'm picking things apart is like I just found it odd that Shauna unloads on Lottie. Like it's like, is it just that she was in front of her? Like she bit Van, she would have just attacked like whoever stepped forward. It's it's like it's almost like it's residual from the stuff with the blanket and the whispering to the baby while she was sleeping,
yeah.
and like
I mean, they
you,
definitely have unfinished business because of her creepiness about the baby.
and yeah, the circle and all that. It's just like there.
Well, but she's leaning into her role as the leader of what's going on there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
she's, I
Taking
mean,
responsibility.
yeah, well, yes, and she's choosing to make herself um the symbol of all this shit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's just like, so like there's a scene in Lost where it's at the end of season 3, and it's when they've left the camp, and like Ben is there with them, but back at the camp they've captured Jen and Bernard and Saeed, and they pretend to shoot them. And Jack, like, there's a standoff, and like Jack lets it happen because he refuses to relent, and then he punches Ben in the face over and over again, very similar to what happens in this scene. But in that case, it was 100% clear why Ben and why Jack was punching Ben, you know, like all of the motivations were sort of right on the table. Like the thing that struck me here is like there wasn't really a clear indication earlier in the episode that Shauna was thinking about Lottie specifically. You know, I mean, there have
Well, I mean,
been
the burning the blanket, I think, is pretty clear.
burning the blanket does connect to Lottie. I agree, and I think that's probably the closest you get to that. But it's just it was a little bit of a crooked line to me.
I mean, I think the previous episode also highlighted her being, you know, her having issues with Lottie.
Yeah, definitely,
So
definitely. She tries to step in, and Ty's like, "Okay, enough with you." She's like, "Embrace your pain or whatever. Let your pain open you to this moment." Yeah, it's just
you wanted it to really beat us over the head. You wanted it to be like you wanted them to spoon feed it to the viewer.
I guess I thought that it's like sometimes they play things on the nose. Sometimes, you know, the earlier
Yeah.
scene.
Well, lightning crashes is pretty on the
Yeah,
nose.
definitely, definitely. And you know, the scene about the goat with, you
Yeah,
know, Callie and stuff, like they really like hit the theme directly.
yeah,
And so it's striking to me when they don't do that.
yeah.
When it's
When
it's
they
a
don't,
little bit
um,
implicit like what we're supposed to think. We just kind of are invited to draw our own conclusions. Like there hasn't been the obvious build up to that, even though like yes, the seeds are sown, but it feels like there's a middle section that's missing between that and like this level. She goes all in. It's brutal. It's really horrifying, actually. Like the way Lottie looks after this, it's just like Ben looks. It's like she could barely move. Like you know, like
it's really bad. Yeah,
it's really horrifying. I mean, and
yeah. It reminded me of the Fight Club thing.
yeah, it's very much like that. It's very much like that. Yeah, like violence as therapy, I guess.
Yeah, and specifically when they beat the shit out of, I guess it's Jared Leto,
Yeah, Jared Leto. Yeah, yeah. I wanted to
who
destroy something
honestly
beautiful.
deserves like the actor of the character.
Maybe he really got punched in the face in that scene because he's a method actor.
Ugh. It was everybody's favorite day on set when they got to beat the shit out of Jared Leto.
I think that take was good. No, no. I think we
No,
should do another one at
yeah.
least. All right. But it's a good scene. It's a good juxtaposition. The back and forth is interesting. There's also no clear like conflict between Lottie and Sean in the present day. So anyway, just want to note all that.
Hmm.
Okay. So finally, we go back to Lottie's camp, and Acolyte comes outside and tells him that Jeff is called. Shauna goes in and answers, and Jeff tells her that the police have found Adam's remains buried at a state park. And that mighty cliffhanger is where we leave Showtime's Emmy winning, critically praised drama series Yellowjackets for this week.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. You know, the going I kind of thought going to the camp sort of put the end to that plot, you know, that they sort of got away with it, like, oh, I'll describe his weird ass balls and LOL and I'm gonna leave now. And I don't know. It seemed because it's like it's still unclear to me like how they're gonna resolve that. So I don't know. This is clearly pointing the way that they're gonna push it. I mean, if they find remains at a certain point, like, I mean, you know, they still have to prove they're connected to the remains. Just because he's dead doesn't mean she killed him.
I love how Jeff is
Jeff is
with
the
his like,
Jeffiest Jeff I've ever Jeffed.
yeah, with this like, I have some sad news for you. Do you remember that guy you got into a fender bender with? Well, he's dead. And they found his
Yeah,
remains.
yeah, yeah.
Like, oh my
Yeah,
God.
he has to talk about it like they don't know what really happened.
Right, because he's just been missing.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's worried that like someone could be
Yeah.
listening and he doesn't want to
No,
get
I
in the
love it
way.
because it's so like the way that you deliver the news. It's just like,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it kind of seems like it's calling back to Misty's thing too, where she vaguely alludes to like she also is oblique like that thing that you
Thing.
talked about, you were right,
Yeah.
you know, like it's kind of on that level.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we will see where they're going with all of this.
I think we will. I'm pretty sure that If Adam Martin is not resolved by the end of the season, I will eat my hat.
Oh,
Again, I have a lot of hats and I'm gonna have to eat a lot of them.
I hope you're hungry for hats.
You don't think it's gonna get resolved this
I
season?
didn't. I don't know. I
Oh,
just was saying that. Yeah. We'll see. We got 2 more episodes.
yes, two more. Two more. So this is the anti-penultimate, as they call it.
Indeed. Not to
So
be confused with the anti-penultimate.
yeah, so they had like a nice moment frolicking, and then their revelry was interrupted by an annoying thing from the real world. Will Lottie help them somehow? It seems like she's in a position to do that. We'll see. I don't
We'll
really know
see.
how Lottie can help, but she's there.
She is there.
And it's like, is that going to be wrapped in with the like, well, there's some violence for you?
Well, yeah, maybe they'll just sacrifice the whole police for anyone who knows about the case.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're gonna like kill and eat Kevin and Matt.
Oh, poor Kevin.
Or will Kevin agree to eat Matt?
Ooh,
I just want to know what
that's
you
a
all went
twist.
through.
Oh, poor Kevin. Well,
I think that's it for this week.
mysteries remain.
So many questions remain. So many answers will or will not be
Also
given.
remain.
But we'll find out next week. So,
Until then,
any final comments? Good to go.
good,
All right.
good to
Well,
go.
we'll see you next week with next week's episode, whatever it's called. And until then,
Buzz,
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 buzz.
buzz.